Hello there. Are you into DIY audio? I know I am. One of the things you need for DIY audio is tools. And today we're going to talk about 5 of them that you shouldn't scrimp on. So sit down, grab a cup of coffee, and let's talk about 5 tools that you need for DIY audio. Today's sponsor comes from Sith Audio. Not only Sith Audio, but they've collaborated with the Teamsters to come up with the Sith Audio / Teamsters vinyl handling gloves. That's right. We all know that when you pick up your vinyl, you don't want to pick it up with just your bare hands because you have oils and things like that, bacteria. That's why you want to get a nice pair of Sith Audio Teamsters vinyl handling gloves. They're guaranteed to not have static stuff or adversely affect your vinyl in any way. Sith Audio Teamsters vinyl handling gloves. They're made out of real cowhide, like gloves used to be made when they were good. Sith Audio, I feel like I'm doing jazz hands. Sith Audio audiophile Teamster vinyl handling gloves available. You gotta pay an annual fee, and then you can buy them for $13,000. Sith Audio audiophile Teamsters vinyl handling gloves. The first thing, if you're gonna do any work on crossovers, you need to get a decent soldering iron. You don't have to buy a super expensive one, but you also don't want to buy a super cheap one because these will break. You can go down to AutoZone and buy a $5 one. Guess what? You're going to get a $5 soldering iron. It will work sometimes, kind of. But I bought this one for about 40 or 50 bucks from the Amazon. This is a Lenovo 926 LED 3. It's got variable temperature control, and this does get up to temperature fairly quickly. This thing comes apart, you can get a new heating element and all that stuff, and it comes with a whole bunch of different tips. This is the tip that I use most of the time. This or kind of a spade tip, but I usually use this sharper tip right there. When you're in tight spaces, that's what you want. This one's not perfect, but if you kind of maintain it and kind of figure out where the failure points is, this thing gets loose. So you always got to make sure that you keep it tight. Don't tighten it here. Tighten it right here when you need it. And don't over tighten it too, because this is made out of plastic and it will break on you. But overall, this thing has been good for me. I've put together probably 16 pair of speakers and done even more crossovers with it. So this is good. And also get one of those. I'll just get it. Make sure you also get one of these. Basically, it's kind of like steel wool into one of these little deals. And what you do is you clean off your tip. Don't mess with this with a file or things like that because you will destroy the usefulness of it. So use something like this. Hey, thanks for watching today. Please like this video and subscribe to the channel. I do this for a living, so it means the world to me because I'm insecure. So I like the likes, and I like when you subscribe because it makes me feel better as a person. Numero 2. Wire strippers. Now, there's a variety of different kinds. I recommend these. I thought these were going to break almost immediately when I got them because, well, they feel pretty cheap. Little did I know that nearly 10 years later, this thing would be going strong, and it is the wire stripper that I grab most outside of even the more expensive ones. Why? Because it just works. You can move this little thing up and down to kind of tell it how much jacket to take off, and it's just kind of self-adjusting. They're not expensive. This was about $17. Now, I also use one of these, and this is a, what is it, Klein? No, this is a Commercial Electric. Very, very nice wire stripper. But what I end up using is the plier functionality more than anything else, and the wire cutter. But this one will work, obviously, and it works better than most of the cheap ones like this. But I'm always grabbing this one instead of this one. This is a good tool too, and you probably should spend some bucks on one of these, but I don't use it for wire stripping as much as I should. This is the one that I would not recommend. And not just this one because it's a piece of garbage, but this design. What you do is you put the wire in here and then you go and then it pulls it apart. In theory, you'd think this works great. There's a bunch of parts that need to be adjusted, and it just doesn't work as consistently as this one does. And the name of the game is quickness and putting together your crossover as fast as you can and stripping your wires as fast as you can. That's why I like this one. Anyway, in all seriousness, these are outstanding. Even if you're just making a pair of speaker cables, I would get these because it makes it super easy. Number trace. These little guys. These are very, very sharp, delicate wire cutters. These are really good when you're doing work with resistors, diodes, transistors, inductors, pretty much any of the pieces, as long as they're not super heavy gauge, because you don't want to use this on heavy gauge, because you want to keep this sharp. This is for detail work, and you can see it's kind of bent right there, so you can get there kind of at an angle and then still be parallel with the board or things like that. Great. I use these constantly when I'm putting together a crossover or doing work on a, I don't know, amp kit or something like that. That's super cheap, but these are basically kind of an Asian knockoff version of like a Klein. I'll have to look back and find out which ones these were. They weren't super expensive, but they weren't cheap either. But I would really not cheap out on these because they're quite good. And if you're buying like the Asian version of a better tool, just check out the reviews on there on Amazon, because it's one thing if it has 50 5-star reviews, but if it has 5,000 4.5-star reviews, chances are it's pretty decent. And if it breaks, you can just send it back to Amazon right away. Now, as far as lifetime warranties on these tools, like 3 years from now if this breaks, I don't know if you're getting another one. These little thingies are awesome. Couldn't live without them for DIY. Heat shrink. You get a whole bunch of pieces of this for not very much money. Heat shrink is really useful for when you're putting together speaker wire or crossovers or anything that has a wire that you want to cover up. This one comes in a variety of sizes. Now, the one thing that I would suggest, which I don't have, but it's going to be my next purchase when it comes to DIY audio, it's going to be a heat gun. A real heat gun. Not a hair dryer, not a lighter, a real heat gun. And you can probably get those from Harbor Freight. And if you're only using it for DIY audio, I don't think you need to spend a ton of money on a heat gun. You should spend a little bit of money on heat shrink. And you can get it in different colors. I have white, I have red. These are blue, as you can see. You can get any color that you want though. Just kidding, these aren't blue. They're brown. Heat shrink makes your project not only look better, but be safer, and you reduce the risk of any shorts because you're covering it up with the heat shrink. You can use electrical tape, which I've done before. You can actually use like a hot glue gun to cover up some areas, which I've done before. But I like heat shrink the best because it just looks the best. And I just kind of get a little bit of pride when I'm putting heat shrink in exactly the right spots and getting it all nice, nicey looking. Heat shrink, get some. Number 5, a high quality machete. Just kidding. You don't need a high quality machete for DIY audio. I'm sure we could figure out a way to use this in DIY audio, but you don't really need one of these. This is a joke because I thought it was funny, and it was right next to the things that I wanted to talk about. Clampies for your speaker enclosures. You don't have to get fancy ones like this. That's actually supposed to do that. Okay. Just put it on there. See, it goes back on. And that's another thing. These are the DeWalt ones. I think I got these from Home Depot. These are very good clamps. I also have these kind of old school ones. They're very good too, except these have a tendency to fall off, and I usually put another piece of board in there to expand the surface area of what I'm actually clamping. But I do use these a lot. These are cheaper than these. Now, you don't need 20 clamps. You can probably get away with 9, but I would usually get 12. So what I do is I usually get 6 good ones like this, and then the rest cheap ones like this. And then I'll clamp this down, clamp something down for maybe 2-3 minutes, let it set, kind of move it just a little bit. Anyway, I am not opposed to places like Harbor Freight, and I've bought a lot of things from Harbor Freight. I bought their versions of clamps that look like this from Harbor Freight, thinking I was going to be saving a bunch of money because they were significantly cheaper. I think they were $8 a piece. I think these are between $16 to $30 a piece. So I thought, you know what? It'll work. I don't build that many speaker enclosures. It'll be fine. Well, it wasn't fine. I don't have any of the Harbor Freight clamps anymore because they all broke or they're bound up and they don't work anymore. I suppose I could take them back. Maybe they have a lifetime warranty. But I wouldn't chintz out on your clamps for your enclosures. These are much better. Look at the surface area right here. And these get very tight. Clamps, don't cheap out on them. It's one of those things where you can really never have enough, but don't feel compelled to go out there. I've actually used clamps and like a 50-pound kettlebell to glue an enclosure together. And guess what? It worked out just fine. It didn't fall apart. So that's what I use for DIY audio. And I've learned, don't cheap out. You can kind of cheap out, but don't cheap out on your soldering iron. Don't cheap out on your clamps. Get some of those really good wire cutters. And you can cheap out on the wire stripper because it works better than the expensive ones. If you want to support the channel, you can sign up for Patreon, patreon.com/cheapaudioman. Every Sunday night we have Patreon-only Zooms, Patreon-only Discord, Patreon-only Facebook group. You can also sign up for Amazon Music, Tidal, or Room. Links in the description. Click sign up. Even if you quit, I still get a couple of bucks. You can also use the affiliate links in the description. Some of these will be linked. Those are affiliate links, so I get a commission if you buy stuff from them. It doesn't cost you any more, though, so it's a great way to support the channel. You can also use the thanks button down at the bottom of the video next to the share button. You can buy me a cup of coffee, but don't feel compelled to buy me anything. So, don't binge watch anything on Netflix or Hulu. Run on down to your hardware store and buy some of these supplies and make a speaker or an amp and fill your soul with happiness. And with that, I'm Randy. I'm the Cheap Audio Man.